So, calling the meeting, we're going to have student trustee Ruiz Martinez, who is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So, if you can stand. Okay, so pursuant to Board Policy 2350, persons may speak to the Board of Trustees either on an agenda item or on other matters of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and before any board action is taken. Comments must be limited to 3 minutes per speaker and 20 minutes on the same or substantially similar subject, unless a majority of the board votes to extend the time limit. As a matter of policy, members of the board may not discuss or respond to matters raised during public comment unless the matters are properly noticed for discussion or action in open session. Anyone who requires a disability-related modification or accommodation in order to participate in the public meeting should contact the Chancellor's office as far in advance of the board meeting as possible. Do we have any public comments? No? Okay. So at this time, I will turn it over to the Chancellor to introduce our budget item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So today we have one agenda item only, and that is to discuss our budget, where we are currently are, what our projections look like, and so on. And so with that, I will turn it over to Executive Vice President Torres for today's presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair. You received a summary, executive summary of the budget. So what we did, we put it in a PowerPoint so that it's easier to follow and read more than anything. But whatever we're going to cover, it is pretty much in the document that you have already received more than anything. Madam Chair, it's up to you if you want us to go through the PowerPoint and then have questions at the end, or if you have questions in the middle, it's up to you, however you want to, you can decide that.
It's just you and I right now, so do you want to have them maybe go through the presentation and we'll hold our questions? Because you'll probably answer our questions along the way.
Probably,
so
yeah.
If you go through the presentation,
Definitely.
that'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
So this is the agenda that we're going to follow. We're going to tell you a little bit of the history that has happened and a little bit where we're going as well. We're going to talk about the funding options that were available for us last year, what's available now, the enrollment history that we had happen, the future funding options, state budget, current and future enrollment, and then the final budget as well. Just to give you a reminder, an update of what has taken place over the past couple of years more than anything. In 2022-23, we had the emergency conditional allowance, which we opted in. With that came a few requirements that we had to follow. I'm happy to inform you that we met every single one of those requirements, which was really great as a district. Part of that, you have seen the updates, which one of them was the open college, in which we opened our college to everyone in the state of California, nationwide as well. We have seen an increase in some of the FTEs when it comes to that. But that's part of the emergency conditional allowance requirement. Also, the other thing, another requirement was the 2 months, officially 2 months of fund balance. We had a goal in the past from the board to have a 2 months balance, but it was never officialized. It's never in a board policy. This was a requirement of the emergency conditional allowance, and we did that. And you'll see where we are when it comes to that when we get to the numbers. The enrollment history, as you know, we were doing really good in 2019-20. We had a tremendous amount of FTEs. COVID hit. And you'll see the yellow bars, the golden bars, how our enrollment dropped significantly. However, as you see, you have seen this bar in the past before. The line item is the protections and the level of funding in regards to FTEs that we received. In 2021, we were protected by the hold harmless. In 21-22, as I mentioned, we were protected by the emergency conditions allowance. And 22-23, we were also by the emergency conditions allowance. As you can see here, we've been protected and we've been getting funded more than the actual FTEs that we have produced. Moving to the future, as we have mentioned before, option 2, emergency conditions allowance, is not an option anymore. The only options remain is option 1, which is the total computed revenue based on the student center funding formula, and that's what SCFF stands for. And then option 3, which is the hold harmless. And within option 3, there are a few protections, and then what is once it's all calculated, we get the higher of any calculated item as we move forward as well. It's important to note that hold harmless expires in 24-25. As you know, we have been talking about the fiscal cliff and avoiding the fiscal cliff more than anything. We have plans for that, and you'll see that as we present to you the numbers and the FTS. We've been talking about this for quite a while. We've been planning ahead for quite a while. We know that we do not want to experience a fiscal cliff, so we have different plans to implement as we move forward. Some of the items to highlight from the state budget is that there were $678 million to increase the rates for the student center funding formula due to the COLA. There was and that was part of the $790 million that you see there, which included increases to some categorical programs as well. There was a reduction of $500 million to facilities maintenance and energy projects. This one, was one of those controversial items, and we were very concerned about this because of the precedence that this sets, that the state takes back money that was already given to us. So this is one of those funds that we have already allocated to the colleges. We have signed some contracts, not all of the contracts, but we have signed some of the contracts. But it was very concerning. We still remain very concerned that the state has opted for this type of strategies to balance the budget. Taking back money from previous years, it's concerning for us. That tells us, should we spend the money when we get the money, or should we hold for another year to make sure that the state is not going to take it? That's pretty concerning that this is something you can implement at the state level. $50 million for retention and enrollment. We continue to receive this. When we first received this money, it was $100 million for the entire system. Then it was $200 million, and now it's been reduced to $50 million. So as you can see, the one-time monies has been significantly reduced from the previous years. There is some flexibility in the use of some funds because they reduce the facilities maintenance and energy projects. They allow some flexibility for some some districts, depends on their priorities, either to use the monies, either for flexibility in deferred maintenance of the COVID recovery block grant. You have heard us before talked about the recovery block grant. That was another one of the items that was in danger of being taken back as well. That's the money that we had promised the students for Books Plus, and we fought really hard. We advocated for that funding to state. We sent letters. We talked to people. We advocated in our groups that all of us participate in, and we feel that we were very loud and annoying, which is good. Success, we can be pretty annoying when it comes to funding and our students as well. Reduction, I mentioned that, the student housing funds. The student housing fund is another one that's possibility. It's going to change, but in the budget, one of the things that they have promised, again, going back to what the state's strategies and decisions are happening, they had told us that there was going to be funding, that they were going to issue bonds to pay for student housing. But then they said that, no, we're not going to issue the bonds. We're going to ask the districts to issue the bonds, and then we'll give them the money to reimburse them to pay for that debt service. We had concerns with that. especially with the strategies that they implemented of taking back prior year funding. And there's no guarantee that the state is going to give us monies. And also the other thing is that they were going to give us the money if we get a student housing project from the general fund. As we know, the general fund not always has enough money, so there's big concern as to where we're going to get the money if the revenue bonds were issued by us and not by the state. As of 2 days ago, again, this is one of the items that we have advocated hard to make sure that the state continues issuing the revenue bonds, not us, because they need to guarantee it, not us. As of yesterday, I heard that the state is going to be changing this, and they're going to be issuing the revenue bonds themselves. Current and future enrollment, again, part of avoiding the fiscal cliff more than anything. We have plans, we have goals to set for, that's what we have set for ourselves. 22-23, you see that we had a goal of 12,939 FTS. We met the goal as a district. And moving forward, we had set a goal for this current year of 4%, or 13,457 FTES. And then after that, the following year, we have a 3% goal, and then a 1% goal, and then a 1% goal. Again, these were established with the unknowns of how many students were going to come back from that left from COVID. We are very excited. I think you heard President Horan. He was very excited. He wanted to jump off his seat when he gave you an update last month. I think 12%, but we are seeing a tremendous growth in our colleges when we compare to the previous years, so which is a great thing. We do want to get to a valley to the 10,000 FTS. They dropped below the 10,000. And let me remind you a little bit, or for those that don't know, part of the funding that we get from the state is based, one of the funding categories is based on the size of the colleges that we have. Small, medium-sized college and a large-sized college. The number of FTS that determines a medium-sized college is 10,000 FTS. Valley has been a medium-sized college, but because of COVID, it dropped below the 10,000. We have protections, as I mentioned before, but those protection expires in 24-25. And we have until that year to bring Valley up to 10,000 to maintain the medium-sized college. So that's kind of one of the things that we're looking at as well. We wanted to show you this, but we've been having conversations about this, about how committed we are to meeting the enrollment goals, and also what happens when we don't meet the enrollment goals as well. And this is 1% of not meeting the enrollment goal. So we have a 4% target right now for current fiscal year. But what happens if we only achieve a 3%, let's just say? Because we're protected, right? We're protected, so in 23-24, we don't experience any losses, pretty much. However, beginning in 24-25, the year after, we started to experience those losses, even though we're still protected by the whole harmless next year. You gotta remember, our FTS is funded on average, 3-year average FTS. So the average goes down, and therefore we experience a loss in revenue in the amount of $501,289. Then the year after, assuming that we meet the 3% goal that we have set for ourselves, we still continue to lose money, $759. And then we continue to lose money the year after, $779, and then the year after. This is just 5 years. That's about $2.8 million in 5 years that we lose if we don't meet the enrollment goal by 1%. So that's how important it is for us to make sure that we avoid the fiscal cliff, and to show that we are committed, to show everyone that we're committed to meeting these goals, these enrollment goals as well.
Let's talk a little bit about the numbers. What you see on your screen now is really what Jose was talking about a little bit ago. We have many funds. We have over 20 funds. The main one that we talk about and we focus on a lot is the unrestricted general fund. Everything that Jose was just talking about, FTS and the student-centered funding formula, et cetera, that all relates to the unrestricted general fund. And we spend a lot of time on it to make sure that we are able to balance it. As you can see up there, we have a 5-year forecast. So the very first, the column to the left is the budget year that we're talking about, fiscal year 24. What's that?
It doesn't do anything.
Doesn't do anything on it when you shine it. So when you look at the columns, obviously the very far left is the description, but then the next one over, it says final budget 2023-24, okay? So that's the budget year that we're talking about. It's the unrestricted general fund, and as you go across, it just increments one more year, so you can see that it's a 5-year forecast. As you can see here, there's a lot of data here. We really have a good summary on the next page, but I'll just show you on this page that we are here. If you look towards the bottom, you can see 2 black horizontal rows, and I think those are important things to focus on. For example, the bottom black line, it says total operating gains and losses. As you go across there from year to year, you can see that we have a balanced budget, that in each one of those years, that number is positive, and that means that the revenues exceed the expenses for that particular year. So I think that's a good one to look across to make sure that the budgets are balanced. We're happy that we're able to provide a balanced budget here. As you go down to the next black horizontal bar, it says ending fund balance. Why that's important is we have to, as Jose mentioned, we have a requirement by the State Chancellor's Office, and also they're following the GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association, I believe. They provide a lot of recommendations on how we can be fiscally accountable and fiscally safe. And in their opinion, we need to keep 2 months' worth of expenses in the fund balance. And so as you look at that row across, you can see the balance that's there. And if you look immediately below it, for example, in the very first 23-24 column, it says 2.01. That means that we've met the requirement just barely, that we had just a little bit over 2 months expenses in fund balance. And you go over to the next one, and it's 2 and 2.012, and then 2.01. You can see we're kind of right on it. But we certainly forecast that we're going to meet that requirement.
So a couple of things to note as well here towards the revenues, the 1, 2, 3, the fourth line. I'm gonna put an arrow on it if it works. There you go. You see the PARS trust gains and the FCC legal reimbursements. Again, I think sometimes we forget about the great decisions that you made many moons ago when we received the money for the FCC participation. But the investments, the wide decisions that you all approved, that you all made when it came to investing the majority of those funds, this is money that we receive on an annual basis, $2 million. With those $2 million you'll see there, we will have trouble balancing the budget. It is tremendous. It is tremendous help, tremendous assistance that we have. The other thing, the FCC legal reimbursements, the SO portion of the SEC, part of the decision that you made was to pay back the legal fees that we spend, and also a portion of the SO. It was a total of $3 million. So we're anticipating that we're going to use about $2 million of that in the next 3 years, $3 million, to balance the budget. It's again, just want to commend you for those decisions that you made many years ago.
Thanks, Jose. Just one other thing on this. As you go across these columns, I wanted to remind you, Jose mentioned there are FTS goals that are associated with this. And as he presented on the previous slide, if you look at the first column there, our assumption is that we're going to meet the 4%. And then as you go to the next one over, it's 3%, 1%, 1%, 1%. Those assumed FTS goals are baked into these numbers. As we turn to the next page, excuse me, the next page is just, oh, sorry, was there a question?
Yes, I just want to make sure that I understand it. I mean, sure. When we talked about all the goals we had for that money some time ago, when we first started the standing committees for financial, we wanted to have a separate income revenue, and that's why we invested that money, I think, very wisely. But how much of this money, except for that fund, can we count on an ongoing basis? I mean, because so much of it depends on whether or not the state budget, how much is allocated to us on the state budget, right? So is there a prediction from the state? Have they projected 5 years in the future? There's no prediction.
There's no projection. Just this morning, the chancellor and I were on a call. We were talking about advocacy more than anything, and the student centered funding formula. If we were gonna change it, and that this Department of Finance saying it's too complicated right now. We need to simplify it. And a comment from our chancellor was, whatever is done, we need to make sure that there's projections. Because this student-centered funding formula, when it was implemented, there was no projections, and it was pretty much left up to us to make the projections. You might recollect that we did a white paper as well when we implemented this funding formula of how there was winners and losers, and because those projections were not done. So no, unfortunately, the state has not made predictions. We are the ones that are making these predictions based on the information that we have. We read from all the sources that we have, how much is anticipated cost of living adjustment is going to be every year, what's the inflation gonna look like, what is the revenues gonna look like, and we make educated guesses and educated predictions more than anything. And this is what this is, forecasting, right? Educated with the information that we have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've looked at the data coming of students coming into our K-12, what we project as far as enrollment, as far as, I mean, we were looking at those 5 years ago, and we made projection, then we had a burst of money, and we sort of projections. So are we going to do that? Does this data include that data that comes from our service area, as far as what they have in K-12, who's starting kindergarten, yada, 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 how many they expect to graduate or be able to come to our colleges?
Yeah, so when we create the FDS goals, we have conversations, right? The goals are not done in a vacuum. We don't come out from those goals from just say, okay, we're gonna get these goals.
No, I get
So
that.
we'll have conversations, There's a new district enrollment management committee that we created, we brought back. We used to have it in the old days, but we brought it back to have these kind of conversations, because we have conversations with the colleges, because the colleges are more in tune as to what's going on with their districts more than as a district as a whole. And we talked about these goals, 4%, that seem realistic, that seem doable, based on the enrollment that you're seeing from the K enrollments that you see that are happening. So those are the conversations that we have more than anything. But to say that we have the data in front of us, I don't think we do, but we have conversations with the campuses to make sure that we're not creating unrealistic goals more than anything.
So, okay, I think I got my question answered.
Okay.
The projection, what are the projections from the county, from both counties? Because we service a huge area, and those are the most, San Bernardino primarily and Riverside. What are the projections? And they have the data, obviously, as to what enrollment looks like, what the number, I mean, we have been decreasing in the K-12s. So what does that mean for us?
So as you're correct, there is a decreasing population, and I think that's not just in the Inland Empire, San Bernardino County. I think that is statewide. Statewide, right? And one of the conversations that we've been having is that to take a look at, so who now becomes our target audience, right, in order to meet our projections. And a lot of the conversation now is geared around adult education. We have a lot of folks that are not traditionally aged that are looking to upscale in their profession. They need additional education. We have folks that are not traditional age that have never come into higher education but are looking to better for themselves and their families. And that also launches into the conversation about redoing or taking another look at our enrollment funding formula, because it does not take into consideration, as it should, the adult learner. It does enrollment as a whole, which, there could be arguments for and against, right? There's arguments for and against. It should be just based on completion. My argument would be define completion before you lock us into that. So that is being taken into consideration. Adult education right now is something that a lot of our CEOs are diving into. That would be fantastic for us in this district because we have a robust adult education programs. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, I was reading certain articles, and that's what they were saying. They were saying that everybody's declining, K through 12 is declining. So they're making a strong effort of combining everybody. Let's do enrollment, I talked to some people in Colton about the relationship that they have with us now. And so I think that we need to continue to kind of push forward because everybody's in trouble right now. The community colleges, the Cal State, the UCRs. So I think it's really good that we're trying to reach out and establish a stronger working relationship. I know that you belong to the Unified School District, San Bernardino. You were in a meeting, and then and Colton wants to get more involved now as well. I met with the because that's my district really, Colton, Bloomington and Grand Terrace, and they're really excited about what they're doing with us, and we're going to have to come up with creative things to help them out because sometimes they're not going to be able to have the funds to be able to help the students. As Rialto as well. I think you're hitting the superintendents, and I think the superintendents are really excited when they don't have to pay for certain things, if we can get them to take advantage, and perhaps we can even have a longer and stronger conversation with the state, with the community college system, or even where elected officials. I think they're also very concerned. They're there to help us. They don't have the solutions, and to some degree, neither do we, but I think if we can come together and learn from K through 12, learn the people that are about 20 to. I remember one time they were going to, we're not going to allow people to come back if they already had a BA or master's degree. But now they're even thinking that, they need to be retrained.
Sure.
So I think it's great to pursue that.
And then also addressing those issues, the new state chancellor's Vision 2030. A few of us were up in Sacramento for the welcoming presentation for her, and she talked a little bit more about her vision. And so as we all start to implement that vision, we'll be doing more work with dual enrollment, which both of our colleges have been doing very well at, and then also workforce development, specifically for our adult learners. So lots happening, recognizing that we're gonna have to get a little more creative with our enrollment strategies.
And there was also another conversation with the Cal State system. Are you aware of that, what's going on with the Cal State? They're becoming, it'll be a little bit more vocal because they didn't accept certain requirements or certain programs that initially they had accepted at the community college in terms of,
We're having articulation discussions with them as well. There's also a bit of pushback for BA programs and so on. So a lot of push and pull between the three systems of higher education right now. One of the nice things is that we have one of our own now, as you know, working at the state level. That keeps us informed as things are developing. Dr. John Stanskis, who has a great relationship with the CSUs and the UCs. We think it's a great relationship. I don't know that they think it's a great relationship on moving what we need through the process.
I just want to give you an anecdotal kind of example. Looking at the graduation this year in my family, an extended family, a good number of them, I would say half of them are coming to a community college, Valley or Crafton. and Chafee and RCC, based on programs that are offered, not so much reputation, but the programs may be offered there. But the other 50% chose to go out of state because they could do it online. And so, or I guess they don't have a state, they're online. And so that's what they chose to do, because it allowed them to work and allowed them to then make their own schedule and continue their education. So I'm assuming, and I haven't seen any data in a while, that our online is growing, but I don't know that. I mean, I'm assuming that.
Dr. Haran, can you speak to that? My understanding is that we have still a significant number of courses online.
On the button. For our course schedule, we're still somewhere between 45 and 55%. The exact number I can't take off the top. In person, bringing those more back as people have felt more comfortable and the demand has increased. But it is still significantly higher than it was pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, online classes, both hybrid and fully online, were hovering probably around 20-25% of our schedule. And I would imagine it's similar at Valley.
And then you have hybrid classes too, right?
Yeah, that includes hybrid.
Yeah, okay. So I'm assuming, nobody wants to say it, but are we, as far as personnel is concerned, are we looking at the data on the age of our employees? I mean, that's one of the things that we did before. We offered a golden handshake with the idea that we would have retirees. We could then refill certain positions with the idea that they would be younger and they would not be as expensive. I don't remember whether that was true the last time we did it. It seems to me that we broke even. We didn't make much on that. But I'm assuming that that's being considered also.
We are. That is one of our strategies to make sure that we're avoiding fiscal cliffs, to make sure that we are putting everything that we can possibly can. If we were not to meet the enrollment goals, as we mentioned, that you saw the significant losses, $2.8 million in 5 years. So we are planning, working with Chancellor Hannon as we speak, and evaluating the data and finding a break-even point.
Since we're talking about how concerned we are about our students, I was talking to several students in the store, and they were going to go to San Diego for a community college. And I told them, go to Crafton Hills College. They'll take care of you. By golly, they registered full time. And so I want to compliment your good people there. Your counselors went out of the way to do that, and that's what we need to do, to go out of the way. Same thing happened at Valley College. There was a young man that was going to go into a workforce development program, and he registered full time. So those are the things that are really important, that everybody needs to do their job and to do it well, and make sure that we can help the students. Sometimes the person that wanted to go to Crafton Hills, she had to struggle a little bit to make sure that everything was fit, because she did it the last day. So you guys did a miracle, but she finally got it. So again, I want to compliment, and we need to recognize those individuals, that departments that are helping out. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. So we'll just get to that. Okay. So we've talked about the unrestricted general fund, and I mentioned we have over 20 funds. So what you're looking at now is one of 3 pages, or one of 3 slides as you go across, that will show each one of our funds and give you the same type of information that you saw on the unrestricted general fund. So for example, as you see here, the very first row is the unrestricted general fund, fund number 110, and those revenues and expenses there will match what you just saw with the greater detail. So then as we go over from fund to fund, we can see the same type of information that we saw on the other one. At the top is the revenues, then the expenses, and then the difference is, do we have a balanced budget or not? So to quickly look across, you can look at the bottom, not the bottom bar is orange, but just up from that, there's a grayish bar there. And you can see with the unrestricted general fund, we are balanced, as we showed before, 106,000. As you go to the next one over to the right, now we're the restricted general fund, and that's a lot of grants, mainly grants, categoricals, things like that. That's what's in there. As you can see there, the revenues and expenses match. Our planned expenses and our planned revenues equal each other. As you continue to go to the right, there's fund after fund after fund. The next one is bond interest and redemption. We really don't have much control over that. The county controls that. Then there's child development, capital outlay. Then we start getting to our bonds. We have Measure M and Measure CC. You can see the revenues that are coming in there, and then the expenses as we go through that program, those programs. As you go to the right again, there's cafeteria.
We do want to make sure that we make a correction to the materials that you received and that you're going to see at the final budget approval. The $100 million that you see there under bond measure M on the screen, in your documents to show under measure CC. What you approved last month, you might recollect, you approved the issuance of bonds measures, of bonds. It was for measure M, not measure CC. So we just want to make that correction. But you will get our approval with them under the appropriate measure, measure M.
Okay, and the next slide, as we go across, then we'll see the investment properties. That's the building that we're in here, and the building back there, and the others that we've invested in. You can see some revenues and some expenses there. You might notice that the expenses are more than the revenues. The reason why for this one is in order to induce some of the new tenants. You know how we had some vacancies. We had to do some tenant improvements and things on the buildings. And so it's a little bit of short-term pain, but for some long-term benefit to really induce some 10-year leases and things, some really good tenants. So this year, you'll see that that the expenses are higher than they would be in a normal year. And as you continue to go across, I don't think we have to go across or describe each one of the funds unless you want to, but they're just, retiree benefits, associated students, et cetera, financial aid on the far right. And then the next slide, we see scholarship and loan, we see the OPEB trust. That's where we have the money for the other post-employment benefits. So when people retire, if the district for some reason would cease to exist, there's enough in the trust to cover those benefits for everyone. We're over 100% funded, and that's something that we're really proud of. The next fund over is the PARS, and that's where we have the funds that Jose mentioned before, a lot of investments from the auction proceeds. And there's student clubs and trust. Then there's KVCR, that includes the unrestricted and the restricted fund for KVCR. As you look down below, you can see that the budget is balanced there. They're positive, almost 30,000 on the year. It's good to see the good things that have been happening at KVCR. Then you go over to the next final one, and that's the Inland Futures Foundation, where we receive the KVCR pledges. And really, that's kind of an in and out. The pledges go into the Inland Futures Foundation, and then they go into KVCR to benefit them.
So on the KVCR fund, and then you look at the futures, that's where all their money is being processed when they have donation drives and
Yes,
stuff like that.
yes, the pledges and things are in the revenues there.
So they have a little bit of a balance left over,
Are you talking about Inland Futures?
yeah. Or is that, Indian Futures isn't all KVCR, is it?
No, we are using it right now mostly for KVCR, but it can be used for any purpose as a district that we have. You can see there, with Inland Future Foundations, we're projected that we're going to bring 1.395 in pledges, donations, things like that. There are some expenses associated with generating those revenues, which you'll see there. And then the $1,020,000 that you see there towards the bottom under other outgo, that's what we're transferring to KVCR fund. So it's kind of like the net profit, if you want to think of it, for just generating those revenues. And that we transfer over to KVCR, and that's what helps KVCR balance the budget. Another thing that I do want to mention here is that I don't think you have seen a KVCR balanced budget in quite a while. So there's a gain, $28,000. It's a small gain, but something to celebrate.
A win is a win.
We were losing money. We were losing money. Yeah.
We haven't seen a gain in a long time.
And I know we were gonna hold questions, but since we've
Mm,
gone down
it
the rabbit
started-
hole of
yeah, we
questions,
did.
we'll just go ahead and, so, in Govenda,
Mm-hmm.
what I looked at in Govenda, looks different than what you're presenting. So can you, I mean, I'm not saying the numbers are different, I'm just saying like, what I see, like, it's laid out differently, so can you show me or tell me where the cuts are? Because they're called different things, like Section A, state-based revenues, Section B, other revenues, Section 3, site expenses. That's what I looked at prior to the meeting, so these slides
I can speak to that.
correlate to
you know what it
those?
is?
Yeah, I can
Okay,
speak
you
to
know
that,
what
yeah.
it is.
So what I think you're saying
Yes,
is
Okay,
this one,
got it,
okay.
okay.
right.
Yeah, so in this meeting, we really had it more back a bit.
Got it.
If we turn back, I don't know what slide number it is, yeah, it looks like,
Okay,
yeah, I think
that
that's
one.
the one there, yeah. So what you see on the screen now is a summary of the unrestricted general fund. What you, Trustee Houston, what you were just talking about is really a whole lot of detail. Much more detail than you see there. So you'll see, there you'll see 5 columns, so it's a multi-year forecast, 5 columns.
Sure.
When you looked at Govenda, then you would have seen 1 page for each one of those columns there.
Correct.
And then it has all of the, talked a lot about the student center and funding formula, and it has the FTS and how each one of those are calculated. That's really all the detail that you've seen there in Govenda, and it's summarized on the screen that you have there. So I can help you tie one of the numbers. Would that help?
Yeah, I'm just, because it's got proposed final, because I see that as, it's a summary, and it's the forecast. It's the current year plus the forecast for the next 4 years following.
Correct.
The page I'm looking at on both my computer screen in Govenda and then on the paper right here is proposed final budget 23-24.
Correct. Yes.
And I know that it correlates to what you're showing.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm just not sure where the break points are because they're just
Got
called
it.
different
Yeah,
sections.
yeah.
I think that this one page is reflected on these multiple slides.
Yeah.
Not this one that's up right now, but the ones that you were just going to. I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure that I'm correlating that. Like at some point, I found a number that matched. It was the 23,216,942. Here it was 943 on the slide. But I mean, I was like, oh, okay, that's the same. But I wasn't exactly sure.
Yeah, yes, I think I can be able to walk through that. So the $128 million that you see on the screen, on the PowerPoint slide, it says state-based revenue, $128,677,204. If you look at this, it's
What page number is it?
it's page number
Eight?
Page number 8.
8.
Yes. You'll see the last column, the first gray row, line number 20.
Yes.
So that number matches to the 128,677,204, the summarized version. Okay. The other number, I'll match the other 2 numbers first. Line number 30A, 30, letter A.
Yes.
That matches the PARS trust gains on the screen, the summarized version, $2,050,000. Then 30C is the FCC legal reimbursement, the $700,000. That matches the FCC on the summarized version. The other number that you see under other revenues, $7,598,292, is the combination of all the other revenues that are in there and within that section.
Okay. Thank you for that. But do you
Yeah.
see how I could be confused?
Yes,
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Because I'm like,
yeah,
well-
yeah. Maybe next time we'll create a subtotal for those other revenues.
I mean,
Yeah,
just-
so
or
to make
just
sure
a
it
quote,
balances.
Only
Yeah,
because like,
Yeah.
this is what I prepared
yeah,
for.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
And I was just trying to find what I prepared for.
Yep.
And I was happy when I found one, but it was like, oh man, it's going too
Yeah,
fast. So it's
yeah.
probably just me.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we'll put subtotals for the other revenue, so it's easier for
Yeah, thank you,
everyone to,
thank you.
yeah, yeah. I think that was what we have. Any other questions?
I wish we had a crystal ball.
May I just check for my understanding? For 23, 24, regardless of FTES, we're still under hold harm is based on that.
Yeah.
That's it. For 22, or 23, 24, we have the crystal ball, right?
That is
That one's
correct.
pretty solid.
Mhm, that is correct.
However, when we get into those out years where we don't have a crystal ball or a safety net, that's where this year's work will pay off, a la the very first slide that you were showing. If we don't hit that 4% target this year, then we start out in a hole
That is correct.
out of the gate for next year.
Next year. That is correct.
And I think that we need to reemphasize that this is where we're giving another year to catch up, right? And so for all of us, that we need to come together, you know, from custodians to chancellors to counselors. We're in trouble if we don't get enrollment up. So it's up to us. So we don't want any group of people to come in or associations to come in that we're not doing this and we're not doing that. This is where you can really make a difference. We need to be active in recruiting students, telling people. Like I said, this young lady was already enrolled at Palomar. And I says, Palomar, you got Crafton Hills College, and she lived in Yucaipa. She says, what the heck are you doing? I mean, they made no, but see, young people that's their
San
mentality.
Diego,
Yeah,
San
yeah,
Diego.
but we have Crafton Hills College, you know, and I take a great deal of pride. So anyway, the point is that
We have Mentone Beach.
now, Diane, I would recommend that we reemphasize, and I know you do a good job, but so that people don't come in at the last minute and say, well, we didn't do this. We have 1 year to do what we need to do so that we're not hit hard from the state's formula to catch up. So thanks.
So, I guess this is a chancellor question. It's not really a budget. It is budget, but in order to implement a very program, because that's what we're really talking about, going out and recruiting the different age groups that we identify as potential students. Do we have the budget to invest in a robust recruitment program? That's what I'm.
I think that would depend on the definition of robust, right? There's never enough money. I'll start there. However, I am proud of the fact that both colleges have made enrollment a high, if not the highest priority within their strategic planning processes. I know that there have been countless meetings and conversations about what we do well, what we could maybe stop doing because it's not generating the enrollment that we want. Both of the colleges are also working closely with Mr. Rodriguez's area in an overarching enrollment campaign. So what we have going on is a district campaign as well as individual campus campaigns. So all working in harmony as best we can, fingers crossed.
And I guess this is the time to look at the legislative committee to put together the people who determine the budget and who decide where things are going. How high a priority is education for them to our electeds? Do we need to bring our area, our regional electeds together to talk to them about the need that we have for education? I mean, it's very nice to go visit them and they all pat our heads on the, and say, well, we're aware. But what are you actually doing? and what are you advocating? So,
I think we need to do both. We need to go visit, and then we need to, I think I was talking to Angel, and he's already thinking, because I take some recommendations from the chancellor, and you guys know better than that. But to do something that would be like a conference, let's say, for example. And we used to do that. We used to have our elected officials, we have to have one day and have them at Valley College or Crafton Hills College or our district. Supportive, but we need to understand that I just found out by accident that you guys were up there last Tuesday or whatever it was, and meeting with several people. I already spoke with our chair of the Assembly Higher Education, Mike Fong. He's more than willing to come and do some things here as a you know, like a hearing, like we used to have hearing, like when Department of Energy. And we just have to be creative and creating those opportunities for the elected officials.
well, I think they need to know that it's critical, and they're the ones that are going to have the final vote as to how the budget is allocated. So, I mean, they come and they pat us on the head and they say, you're doing a great job.
Well,
And then they say, but, you know, I'm only one vote. I'm
No,
sorry.
see,
I'm
see-
sorry today, I ate red chili for lunch.
see, Gloria,
So-
you're speaking my language. When I go to Washington DC, I don't want to take a picture with the president or the vice president. The bottom line is this for me, and I'm very vocal. You haven't gone with me to Washington DC. I had a chance. I remember Lily Rivera. We were in a conference over there in Washington DC, and President Bush was having something over there. I left my meeting to go over there and talk to him. We need to be assertive in that sense, to let them know that it's really important, that our education is very important. I don't want to take a picture, even with our local elected officials. And I've been telling Angel, the senator from.
Well, we need to make education a priority for them on their agenda. And that's.
Well,
not-
they
I
haven't
mean,
delivered.
I realize that they have
Yeah.
to make deals.
Yeah, no, but
No question about
the
that.
bottom line is that, to be honest with you, they haven't delivered, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah,
and-
they
and
haven't,
They have
whether
not.
it's-
So
whether it's
there's
state or
there's
federal.
one or two that have delivered, but the other ones have not. I don't want them to come to the facility, you know, grand opening, but they don't give you any money. You know, they don't give you any money. I look at that. I says, no. I want to do that. And this year is going to be a critical year in terms of making sure that they make a commitment. I'll ask Kevin. Kevin, what do you think? Well, I can use $3 million. It may sound like a lot of money, but it's not when it comes to the state. So then you can say, you know, I need it for, let's say, for first responders. Right now, fire is the most important thing. We should capitalize on that. So Angel is going to be making sure that we meet with them, and then for them to come to our campus. You did have one that came to visit you, to Crafton Hills College.
Assemblymember Wallace.
Okay. See, I wish I would have been there. I would have asked questions like, for example, I don't want him to just come in and shake our hands and, you know, no, make a commitment. How much are you going to be able to help us with? We've already gotten, because we have a track record of getting millions of dollars. Aguilar, did $40-some million for a program of some kind, which is good. But he's in a good position so he can give us more than $3 million. We're talking about big money, so.
We're talking about the state budget, so that means our state legislators.
Well, we're going to go with anybody and everybody. I'm even talking about the Board of Supervisors. We're going to have a meeting. We're going to have a meeting with them. I see them opening this and this, $1 million here, $1 million there. But for us, what are they doing? So we're going to do it. And Angel's going to take the lead, and he's already doing a good job. He already called me we have a meeting with the chair of the Board of Supervisors. Because I see them all the time at different events when Eloise invites me to go here and all of that. So that's the advantage that we have, is to be able to pick up the phone and make an appointment. But how much money, bottom line is I don't want to necessarily even shake their hands. I'll shake their hands, but I want to see how much money they're going to bring to our students and our. You don't have the money for their fire training, blah, blah, blah. Valley College is not going to be successful if they don't have any money for, let's say, KVCR. Bottom line, they have to deliver. They have to deliver.
So, Madam Chair, I think that concludes our report.
Public, I see someone from the public who's wanting to,
It's not agendized for public comment. We're
Right.
beyond that.
yeah, we had our public comment prior to, sir.
Professor Jacobs, because we're a Brown Act committee, we have to follow the agenda, and we have moved already beyond public comments. However, your question, we do want to answer it, so Mr. Strong will be around after the meeting, and he'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have on the budget. Thank you. We did start at, actually, we started a couple minutes after 4 o'clock. We've already moved beyond our public comments time. Thank you.
Okay, so with that end of presentation, no more questions from the board. We are ready to adjourn. So our next meeting is our regular business meeting. That will be September the 14th, 2023 at 4 p.m. And with that is 4:57. And without objection, this meeting is adjourned.